The day had started like any other. The sun was barely up, and I found myself in my usual morning routine, making a cup of coffee, staring out of the kitchen window at the quiet neighborhood, and wondering how much longer I could put up with my job. The stress, the constant pressure to meet deadlines, and the unrelenting feeling of being trapped in a never-ending loop of exhaustion. Oakridge House had always been my refuge, my place of peace. But that morning, something felt off. I took my coffee and stepped out for a brisk walk through the neighborhood. Oakridge had always been a quiet town, tucked away in the hills, with little more than the occasional car passing by or a dog barking in the distance. I'd lived in my house for 5 years, and in all that time, I had never once felt uneasy. As I approached my front door, something caught my eye. There was a faint draft, a cold air swirling around the entrance, despite it being a warm summer day. My heart skipped a beat as I saw it. The door was slightly ajar. I froze for a moment, the blood draining from my face. I was sure I had locked it before I left. Slowly, my fingers curled into fists, and I moved forward, each step feeling heavier than the last. My mind raced. Had someone broken in? Was it a random act of burglary? My hands shook as I reached for the door. The lock was broken. It was as if someone had forced their way inside. The door was slightly hanging open, swaying gently in the breeze. My breath hitched in my throat. The sense of violation was immediate and overwhelming. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, and dialed the police. The dispatcher on the other end told me to stay outside and wait for their arrival, assuring me that help was on the way. The wait felt endless. Anxiety gripped me, and 1,000 questions raced through my mind. Who would do this? What did they want? Why would they break into a home like mine? The street, usually so peaceful, now felt like a silent witness to the violation of my private life. It wasn't long before the flashing lights of the police car illuminated the street. Officers swarmed the house, inspecting every room and corner, looking for any sign of who had been there. They took fingerprints, photographed the damage, and searched the entire house. But there was no one. No sign of a struggle. No hidden intruder. As they continued their investigation, I started to walk through my house, hoping that I had simply imagined it all. But that's when I noticed the unsettling changes. Personal items, things I had never even thought about, had been moved. My family photos, which used to hang proudly on the walls, were now crooked or missing altogether. My jewelry box, once neatly organized, had been rifled through. Some pieces were missing. It wasn't just the bedroom. The kitchen was a mess too. My usually organized drawers had been emptied and scattered across the counter. Even the pantry had been disturbed. Food items out of place, some boxes open, as if someone had been inspecting every can and jar. The living room, too, was disheveled. Books had been pulled off shelves, stacked in haphazard piles. Small electronics, my remote control, the phone charger, were not where I left them. It was as if someone had methodically gone through every room, touching everything, exploring the very core of my life. The officers convened with me, explaining that they'd found no leads, and they suggested I review any security footage if I had cameras. My sense of security had been shattered, and the reassurance from the police did little to comfort me. I was alone now, standing in the aftermath of a crime I couldn't understand. The days that followed were a blur. I repaired the lock, installed a security system, and tried to return to some semblance of normalcy. But no matter what I did, the feeling of being watched lingered. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift in the air, sent my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still in the house, lingering in the shadows. I became obsessive about checking the locks. I began to avoid certain parts of the house, almost convinced that whoever had been there before was still watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to return. But that's when I realized something worse. No matter how many locks I put on the doors, no matter how many times I checked every corner, the true violation wasn't physical. It was psychological. Someone had invaded my sanctuary and their presence had left a mark on my mind. I thought I could rebuild my life, reclaim my home. But the experience had changed me. No longer was I safe in my own home. Every shadow, every creak, every gust of wind felt like an intruder. And as I sat alone in the darkness, I couldn't help but wonder, what if they were still out there, watching me from the other side of the door?